So you successfully managed to sprout seeds for your garden indoors. Now you're wondering what to do with all the new little seedlings you just brought up. In this video, you'll learn 2 different ways to care for your seedlings while they still live in your house, including a super affordable DIY cold frame method that allows you to safely move your seedlings in and outside of the house for more exposure to sunlight. I'll also share a few mistakes I made my first year growing seedlings inside so that you don't do the same things. By the time you finish watching this entire video, you know how to water your new seedling, the best practices for natural lighting, how to ensure your seedlings strengthen as they grow instead of becoming weaker, and how to maintain good airflow. So before we get started, I just want to note that as Mother Nature is unpredictable. So the order of things may not appear in the way that they happened. I did things each day as I was able to do so. So you might see me thin this stuff out and then you see a video of me later and they haven't been thinned. That's because I recorded that a few days ago, just so that we're all on the same page here. So speaking of thinning is the very first thing you are going to need to do when it comes to your new baby seedlings. So let me flip the camera. So as I mentioned in the seed starting tutorial, which I will link above somewhere, if you ended up having multiple seeds in the same cell like this, you will end up having to weed out the weakest links, because if there are multiple seeds growing in the same cell, they will start competing for nutrients, they will start competing for water, and that's just causing unnecessary stress that we don't want this early in the journey. So you're going to have to pick out the weakest links and thin them out. So by thinning, you're literally just going to pick out the smallest and or weakest looking links in here. So starting in this one, you want to pay attention to its position in the cell block. These ultimately will be put in bigger like pots or containers, so that's not too much of a concern, but you want to be looking at, is it yellowing? What do the leaves look like? Is it super leggy? Is it thin? Is it leaning? That's going to help you determine how which ones you pick out and which ones you keep in. So for this one, for example, yes, this is the tallest, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the best. I'm seeing this one has more of a blue tint. This is Vate's blue kale. So I'm going to thin this one by just simply picking it out. And there's another one in here. So I will pick this one out. And this is our lucky winner for this cell. So this one will stay. You're just going to do that for all of the cells in your seed starting tray. Just pick out the best, the healthiest looking ones. Look at leaves, color, the stem. Is it super thin and leggy like this? Or is it stronger? What's the color looking like? And make sure there's only one plant or seedling per cell by the time you're done thinning. Now, one thing I will say to y'all, I've never thinned kale, I should say, this early. When I worked on a farm, we didn't normally thin until they were actual plants and we were about to transplant them into the ground. So we could really see like which one was the weaker link of the 2 or 3. So most people do thin here. If you ended up dropping like 4 or 5 seeds in one cell, yes, you want to thin. But because I only have like 2 or 3, honestly, aside from the one I already did to demo, I'm going to leave these because that's what I'm familiar with doing. That's what I did on the farm for the past 2 years. So that's what I'm going to do right now. But if you have like 4, 5, 6 seeds per cell or plant seedlings per cell, you definitely want to thin it down to at least 2. And then, later on in the journey, you'll be able to see like which one is the strongest of the 2, and then you'll pick the other one so it's only one left. But to just keep it blatantly honest, I'm going based on what I know, what I've done at the farm, so that's what I'm gonna do here. So the next thing that we really want to focus on for caring for our seedlings indoors is airflow. So as I mentioned in the seed starting tutorial, which I will again put somewhere up here, once they break the surface of the soil, the top needs to come off immediately. Because if you allow them to sit too long, they can start molding, they can start rotting. Like my bell pepper seeds, you can kind of see them back here. They haven't germinated yet. These kale seeds germinated in like 4 or 5 days. It's been a week. Yesterday made a week since I planted both of these, but my bell pepper seeds haven't germinated yet. But today I had to take them out of the foil pan because I noticed it was starting to mold at the bottom of the seed starting tray. So you know, moisture and humidity, those are like thriving conditions for mold and bacteria and stuff to grow. So as soon as your seedlings cover or break the surface, you want to remove the top. So caring for them indoors, it's the same thing. So if you have a foil pan method like this and you have sprouts already, the top doesn't need to go back on, period, because your seedlings are going to stay inside. But if you are using a storage bin method like I am, and you're moving this in and out the house, you're still going to need to make sure that the plants are getting airflow, but the top will be on because they are too weak to be exposed to like naked wind, if that makes sense. So this bin will protect them from wind, so it's ultimately not naked wind. I personally am keeping the lid on, that's because that's what I know to do, and just cracking it open once it hits a certain temperature, so that they don't get too cold or they don't get too hot. So airflow is very important to prevent mold, to prevent fungus from starting to grow, or fungus gnats. And if you're using the storage bin method where you're putting your bin outside, it's very, very, very important that you leave a crack. So I will show a video. I will put it in right here, but I'll include it again later, because again, these things weren't recorded in a sequential order, but I will include a clip of how I propped open my bin. Going to prop it open for some airflow. Put my sticks in. The top on. Snap one side. Just a little bit of crack for airflow. If you see condensation in here, it needs some air. But just that much is going to be open today. And I got my weight that I need 2 hands to lift, so I'm finna stop the camera. So what I do for kale is a cold hardy plant, meaning that it is able to sustain cold temperatures. I want to say down to like 20 degrees Fahrenheit or something like that. It might be lower than that, because I've seen kale at the farm that was outside all winter, snow and everything, and it was still green, still growing. But once it hits 30 degrees outside, I bring my bin in. So it will be like 33 tonight. My bin is coming, well, it's already inside now, but my bin is staying in for the night because it's going to be 30 degrees outside. So that means it'll only be like 40 to 45 inside the bin, which again is technically okay, especially for kale. But again, just based on my personal experiences, I'm just gonna bring it in so it's not too cold. And then when it comes to propping it open, whenever the temperature outside hits 45 or higher, that's when I'll prop my bin open for airflow. So that means it'll be about 55 to 60 inside the bin. It's typically 10 to 15 degrees hotter inside the bin than it is outside. So once it hits 45 outside, that's when I'll prop my bin open. You can use those numbers, but again, depends on your region, depends on what you're growing. Kale is a hardy, cold hardy crop, so I don't have to be too concerned about cold temps. But if you had like, if my bell peppers had came up already, I wouldn't have them outside in 40 degree weather, because that's a hot weather crop. Kale is a cool weather crop, so it's a little more tolerant to colder temperatures. One thing I will say, as far as my journey of growing seeds, starting seeds indoors last year, I started my chickpeas and I was being really scary with it. Like I would bring it outside and I'd be like, oh my gosh, it's gonna rain, I gotta bring it in. And then, oh my gosh, this happened, and I bring it back out. And then, you know, I ultimately caused my plants to start stressing out because I was, you know, they'd be watered and then I bring them inside where they don't have as much access to air. So now they're not drying out as fast as they would have if I put them outside. So, you know, that's contributing to root rot, that's contributing to yellowing leaves because it's too much water. And, you know, like, don't be scary with it. Plants are so resilient, like so resilient, so much more resilient than you could ever imagine. So, you know, once you put it somewhere, yes, check on it daily, but you don't have to check on it 5, 6, 7 times a day. Leave it alone. It knows what it's doing. It has the program to do exactly what it's supposed to do. You just need to provide the correct environment, and it will let you know if it's not happy. You just pay attention for yellowing, pay attention for, you know, leaning, colors, but don't be scary like I was bringing your stuff in and outside every 30 minutes because you was afraid of this happening and afraid of that happening, because you're ultimately going to cause more stress and more harm than good to your seedlings. Okay, so for sunlight, at this point in the plant's journey, they need a lot of sunlight. And if you are using the foil pan method and you're keeping your container indoors at all times, it is very, very, very important that you put them in a window that gets a lot of light. Ideally, you would want a southward facing window because that will get the most amount of sunlight in a day. And when you do that, you want to make sure that the seedlings are as close to the source of light as possible, because if not, as all plants do, and as you can kind of see here, plants will grow towards the sunlight. They all do that. So if you have your plants super far away from the sun, they're gonna do like that and start leaning and leaning and leaning. And again, something I did last year with my chickpeas, they leaned over so much that they fell. Like they were just leaning over. Like I walked in one day and they were just laid out and I was like, oh my gosh, are you guys okay? Like that's not good. So make sure if you're keeping them inside at all times that they're as close to the source of light as possible and that you rotate them. So I did do this the other day. So I will insert a clip of what I did and what I mean by rotating, but make sure you pay attention to where exactly in your house, like the exact position that the sun hits, whatever floor, table, countertop, whatever it is that you're putting your seedlings in, so that they're actually getting as much exposure to light as possible and as close to the source of light as possible, so you don't have plants that become super weak and thin like this and leggy. That's what happened with my chickpeas, and it wasn't good. The sun grows goes that way across the sky, so naturally all plants lean towards where the sun grows. So what I mean by rotating is, because I don't want them to constantly start stretching this way, today I'm going to turn the container this way so they'll start to lean that way, so ultimately they still coming up straight instead of leaning towards one direction and eventually falling over. And you'll do this if you have them inside in the window too. This is another reason why I advised in my seed starting video to just go ahead and get a storage bin. This is not something you have to be concerned about with a storage bin, because if you have a storage bin, you have your plants outside and they're getting as much sunlight as they would get if they were already planted outside. You don't have to worry about, I would still, depending on where you put it, like I still twist mine like you just saw in the video, I still rotate mine, but they getting sunlight from all angles instead of just, you know, one side of a window, like inside they would be only getting light from one angle. It's coming from the entire thing. So this is a superior method without having to spend a whole bunch of money on grow lights and, you know, all that other stuff. Like the ultimate source of light is the sun anyway. Nothing can replicate that as good as he can. So, you know, now for strengthening your plants, just like anything else, they need to be strengthened. Just like babies have to spend time standing up before they can walk so that they can strengthen their legs and their ankles and everything, these need the same thing. So there are a couple of ways you can work on strengthening your seedlings while they're indoors. One is to get a fan, not a super high powered fan, but a regular like house fan or whatever, and turn it to the lowest setting and just let it run directly over your plants for like 2 or 3 minutes a day. That way, that's like slowly getting them accustomed to getting exposed to wind so they can be strong enough to actually survive when you move them outside. So imagine this week, or I don't want to say week, this fragile, and it's just super windy, and I'm in the Chicago area. So if you from the Chicago area, you already know how the wind can get. If you were to just put it outside like this with no strengthening, no training, no nothing, wind could come snap it. And then it's like, you're going to have to start all over. So you can run that fan over these lowest setting for like a couple of minutes a day, for like a couple of weeks. And then, you know, slowly, okay, turn to medium setting and then turn to the high setting. And then ultimately you're going to have to do it outside anyway in a process which is called hardening off. I will show you how to do that when it's time for me to harden off, but it's too early to do that now. So you could either use a fan or just take your hand, and when I say lightly, I mean lightly, just rub your hand over them like that, back and forth like 2 or 3 times a day, and that should do a little something. But again, having them outside the storage bin with the little crack in the top for airflow, they're getting exposure to that anyway, so that's helping them with the strengthening process. So if you're using this, you probably don't even need to do the little hand method thing at all. But if you're using the foil pan method and your plants are staying inside at all times, you'll want to be doing something to start strengthening them, you know, and like pre-hardening off, basically, we can call it that.
So as far as watering goes, first of all, I just want to say this is very dry. It's not as dry as it looks, but this is dry. You want to be checking your seedlings daily to see if they need watering. To check, you really just tap it. I can feel that they're still kind of moist, but at this point in their journey, because they're so young, you don't want to overhead water by pouring water on top of it like you would a more mature plant, because these are still very fragile, so that could damage them. Also, because I move my storage bin outside, and if it's anything below 45 degrees, I have the lid on. So if you overhead watering, all of this would be wet, and that could expose this or make this more susceptible to rotting. So at this point in your journey, you want to bottom water, which is why these have holes at the bottom. So bottom watering is beneficial because it protects these fragile seedlings up top, and it strengthens their roots, because the roots are ultimately what are going to pull the water up from the bottom and to the actual plant. So what I'm gonna do is take my seedlings out of my container and pour some water in. It should be good, and then put them back in there. And what you'll notice is each of these squares will start to turn a darker brown, and that's how you'll know that they're done watering and they're moist enough. So I'm just gonna let this sit until all of these are a darker brown color, and that's how I'll know that they've been watered thoroughly. So just to check in, it's been 5 minutes, and I can see some of these are starting to get darker, but not completely. Like that one's darker than it was before. That one's starting to get darker. So the water is coming up. It's coming up slowly. So just give it some time. It's been 5 minutes. I'm gonna set another 5-minute timer before I come back out and check on it. So this is what my bottom watered seed tray looks like.
Now you know how to care for your brand new seedlings while they're still inside your house. You know how to water them, how to strengthen them, as well as the best practices for ample sunlight and good airflow. Now there's a whole nother milestone quickly approaching in the lives of your seedlings that is crucial for you to not miss. This next step determines when to begin adding fertilizer to your seedlings and when to relocate them from the seed starting trays into bigger pots. In my next video, I'll be showing you how to figure out when your seedlings have reached this milestone so that you can update your plant care routine accordingly to ensure you have a fruitful growing season. If you found this video helpful, make sure you like it and subscribe to stay tuned for the next video.